Namaste. Welcome to new session. We are dealing with the second factor of means of yoga. Means of yoga means means of restraining chitta. Means of restraining chitta means for us restraining the mind. The means to restraining the mind are abhyasa and vairagya. Now we are considering this Vairagya since the last session. Now let me induct you to most fabulous factor of this aspect of this Vairagya, which is grossly misconstrued by all philosophies in the world, all normative sciences in the world, all so-called religions in the world. They have acclaimed Vairagya, they have acclaimed dispassion, but the notion is misconstrued. Now, today we are going to consider this Vairagya as it was construed in the wisdom of the Lord. Vairagya is nowhere advocating asceticism, the renunciation of the nature that we understand, renounce all enjoyments, renounce all delights, pleasures, enjoyments coming in our way. We are given a world in which we stay. The world is giving us delights and pleasures along with sorrows. We are trying to avoid the sorrows, which is quite logical. But also, by concept of Vairagya, we are given to understand and believe that we must renounce the pleasures as well. Now, what is the point in being in this world? When we are trying to thwart all sorrows, sorrow resources, sorrow sources, we are trying to block from wherever the sorrow comes. That is on one hand. On the other hand, we are trying to plug all the gates of delights with the idealistic notion of Vairagya. Then what is the life here? Not take the pleasures and delights and thwart sorrows. Now, what is this world that we are living in? It is just nothing but weave of pains and pleasures, delights and sorrows. So, there is something wrong in the very notion, idea of Vairagya, because then the world is going to be barren and you are going to be in the world and you are going to combat with the world, because you have to combat for your sorrows to be thwarted, and you are going to combat with the world in order not to take the pleasures, not to get the pleasures. So that is not the idea of Vairagya in wisdom of the Lord. And nowhere apart from the wisdom of the Lord you have this perfect, right, precise, faultless idea and notion of Vairagya. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that in the wisdom of the Lord, in our timeless culture, which has both philosophy, religion. Our culture is having the embankment of philosophy and religion, or weave of philosophy and religion, where Vairagya is not construed in the way the popular mind construes. That Vairagya is to give up enjoyment, give up sensory gratifications, give up body, mind, senses gratifications, and live a very ascetic life. go to forests. So why do we need civilizations? If everyone is going to opt to go to forest, walk to the forest. So, therefore, I'm suggesting that we must have a kind of reappraisal here as to what is our idea of Vairagya, generalities idea of Vairagya, the popular mind's idea of Vairagya, and the global idea of Vairagya, dispassion. And then what is really the Vairagya, which has been hailed in our Upanishads, which has been hailed in our Dharma Shastra, which has been hailed in our philosophies. So we need to have a reappraisal about this. We can't just go by our own ideas of dispassion. That is, to turn our backs towards the pleasures and delights that come our way. To human mind, human psyche, human embodiment has been given senses. The senses have their objects, and their objects are both capable of radiating pain and pleasure. And there is no point in turning our backs to this world and just walk into the forests. So the Vairagya is best postulated in our Dharma, our Dharma Shastra. The Bhagavad Gita has precise, perfect, faultless delineation on Vairagya. If the message of Bhagavad Gita is Karma Yoga, that you must be in the world, you must be in the world, you must be not running away from the world, where Krishna gave that advice to Arjuna when he had that idea coming up to retire into the woods or forests or walk up to the mountain tops and practice some asceticism in seclusion, isolation. So the option was not the ideal option that he had to be on the battlefield. He was trying to turn his back not only to the battlefield, but in that fever, he wanted to turn his back towards the entire world. Now, if you want to just avoid the battle, it is nowhere reasonable or intelligent to just turn our backs to the world. So Krishna kept him on battlefield with his dose of Vairagya. So if you want to really understand what is Vairagya, the Bhagavad Gita is the best treatise. And the whole philosophy of the lore, which is really advocating the Vairagya in the sense it postulates, is best crystallized, encapsulated, and codified in that wonderful hymn of Ishavasya Upanishad, the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma grudha kasya svedhanam. That it doesn't advocate us to turn our backs to the ways of the world and the projections of the world, but it says that the consumption should be taking place with a tyaga bhava. You don't have to renounce the world, but you can be partaking whatever the world radiates for you in tyaga bhava. So it's beautifully summed up in that first hymn of Ishavasya Upanishad. And therefore it advises, kurvanne veha karmani jijivijeshyatakam samaha, that you should be carrying out your karmas, your duties as mankind, as human being. Human being is not merely here to live. Like other subhuman creatures, they come, live, and then die. Human beings are not just supposed to come and live and then die, but kurvanne vehe karmani. Human beings are supposed to carry out their karmas as human beings. That is the greatest purushartha, to be carrying out the karmas of human life and not just live the human life as a creature. Like other creatures, just take birth, live. As long as they live, they live. They try to live as long as they can live, and ultimately face the inevitable death. But we are told to carry out our karmas, our duties, our kartavyas. So that is only possible by being in the world. How will you carry out your duty by turning your backs to the world? That's a paradox, contradiction. Anyway, so we must have a turnaround in our concept of Vairagya and notion of Vairagya and idea of Vairagya. It is not give up this, give up that, give up everything, as we see in some of the asceticisms hailed by some of the so-called religions of the world. The heads of the religion have also been what you call as sannyasis, renouncing everything. So they led a life which no one can ever follow. And if they follow, the human race will come to an end. Nobody faces the world, nobody lives in the world, nobody partakes what the world offers and turns the back to what the world offers, and remain sannyasis in the sense not getting married and therefore not having progeny. What are we going to do with the human race? So we have these purusharthas, Chaturvida Purusharthas, and Grahasthashram is a part of Purushartha, so that the progeny is ensured. Anyway, yet there is Vairagya. There is Vairagya of Brahmacharya Ashram, which has certain characteristics and salient features. There is Vairagya of Grahasthashram. There is Vairagya of Vanaprasthashram. There is Vairagya of Sannyasashram. So all the four ashramas have their Vairagya. Then the idea and practice of Vairagya in the Brahmin culture. Brahmin means not reference to the class or the caste in the sense we understand, jati in the sense we understand. A Brahminic nature, Brahminic qualities, gunakarma of Brahmin. So there is a kind of Vairagya for the gunakarma of Brahmin, then Vairagya for gunakarma of Kshatriya, Vairagya and Vairagya for gunakarma of Vaishya, Vairagya for gunakarma of Shudra. So Chaturvarnas, Chaturashramas, they have their Vairagya cut out, which they can be practicing to be in the path of Dharma. So there is Vairagya in Dharma, Purushartha. There is Vairagya of Artha Purushartha. There is Vairagya in even Kama Purushartha. And there is Vairagya, of course, in Moksha. So the Vairagya must be understood in these dimensions to really construe the concept of Vairagya. So it is just to have thirstlessness. You don't have to banish taking consumptions of the senses, consumptions of the mind, consumptions of their psyche, consciousness. You can take their objects. Senses have their objects, body has its objects, mind has its objects, intelligence has its objects, emotions have its objects. The psyche, consciousness, they have their objects. So objects should be taken. It is not that we must close all the gates for all kinds of consumptions. That amounts to banishing oneself and banishing the human race, banishing the life itself. So this is the guidelines for any one of you who want to really conceive the concept of Vairagya. It is not just one box of ideas that with that box you think this is Vairagya. No. Understand the Vairagya. How it is. If you try to render the concept of Vairagya and look through the lenses of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Brahmacharyashram, Grihasthashram, Vanaprasthashram, Sannyasashram, Brahma Guna Karma, Kshatriya Guna Karma, Vaishya Guna Karma, and Shudra Guna Karma. And then the Vairagya that would come in even our stages of life. We have biological stages of life, we have conditional stages of life. So everywhere the Vairagya would be reset. The concept of Vairagya would be reset. The box of Vairagya would be reconstituted. Vairagya for a child, Vairagya for a youth, Vairagya for adult. So these are all stages in life. So Vairagya is open architecture. It's not a fixed box. Give up this, give up that, give up A to Z, give up everything. This is not practicable. It sans any logic. It sans any reason. So if the Vairagya has to be understood, it has to be studied, studiously understood, pedantically understood with pedagogy, then we have to go by this way, as I just now told you. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Brahmacharya Ashram, Grihasthashram, Vanaprasthashram, Sannyasashram, Brahma Guna Karma, Kshatriya Guna Karma, Vaishya Guna Karma, Shudra Guna Karma. And then biological stages in life and conditional stages in life. We have different conditions in life. We have losses and gains, successes and failures. We have helpless conditions to hopeful conditions. So we have various conditions in life. So everywhere the Vairagya needs to be reset, to be more pragmatic about Vairagya and to be more justifiable in Vairagya. It cannot be just one box and then everyone should be within that box for Vairagya. This sans any social order in human society. So there are poorer people, there are richer people, there are people with dearth of resources, there are people with rich resources. So Vairagya for one who is with the dearth of resources is one Vairagya. Vairagya for another person who has plethora of resources, very rich in resources, it would be different Vairagya. So in the light of our reality of life, Vairagya should be understood. And Bhagavad Gita gives that vision. Bhagavad Gita gives vision for everyone, highly intelligent to not so intelligent or average intelligent. Then it gives eyes for very, very resourceful person to resourceless person, dearth of resources, weak to strong, healthy to unhealthy, intelligent to unintelligent. So Bhagavad Gita is meant for everyone. No one goes out of this circumference of Bhagavad Gita. Although we are in different conditions of life, it has that universal appeal. It has got the universal dimension where everyone is included. Young, old, strong, weak, men, women, healthy, unhealthy, intelligently or strong in intelligence to weak in intelligence, intelligent person to emotional person to sentimental person to logical person, logic-minded person, etc. We have so many kinds of mindsets for human race. You don't get this variety in other species of life, such as tigers and lions and cats and dogs and horses and cows and buffaloes and deers and antelopes and crocodiles. You don't see that much of variety. You won't find crocodile in Chaturvarnas. Some crocodiles of Brahmins nature, some of Kshatriya nature, some of Vaishya nature, some of Shudra nature. You don't find that in tigers and cows and cats and buffaloes and animals and birds. It's only for mankind. That's why it is karma yoni. So in the light of the reality that we are human beings, we need to reconsider our idea of Vairagya. Anyway, this is very exhaustive and extensive topic, which you will have realized by just enunciation to it. And it is something that each one should be thinking. And we have resources to be thinking. The Upanishadic precepts, the Bhagavad Gita precepts, the Shastra precepts. So, one can have one's own way in exploring, discovering. We need to reinvent what the concept of Vairagya is. For ages we have been the same idea of Vairagya. Eons have passed, but we have the same idea of Vairagya. Give up everything, give up everything, give up everything. Starve in your life. Be antagonizing all pleasures. Be antagonizing all delights. Be antagonizing all happinesses. And all these are changing from generation to generation. What was delight 1000 years back to your ancestors, and what are delights to you today? And what will be delights for your great grandchildren? Will be different. So it cannot be just one fixed box. We are going through so many civilizations, we are going through so many kinds of eons, and therefore we need to have open architecture of Vairagya. And I have just given a foundation for you to have a thought process, how it is quite flexible kind of structure, open architecture for Vairagya, from the idea that Vairagya should be seen in light of the Chaturtha Purusharthas, the Chaturvarnya, then Chaturashrams, then stages in life, biological stages in life, conditional stages in life. Therefore, we can't have fixed idea of Vairagya. Give up everything and that is Vairagya. Renounce everything and that is Vairagya. What a child has to give up, what a youth has to give up, what an old person has to give up are different things. So let's try to have more rational approach in understanding this Vairagya, which has been dubbed as total renunciation of all enjoyments, delights. We need to surrender to God rather than merely surrendering the objects. How many objects are there for you to surrender? How the objects are enticing you in different stages of life and different conditions of life. You know, how difficult proposition it is to be giving up every delight and happiness. The delight of happiness of a child is in cookies and chocolates and toys. Now you don't have delights in those things. What is the point in you renouncing that? And then what you will have to renounce now is totally different than what a child may be advised to renounce. So it is quite unwieldy, and therefore there is some irrationality in that idea of Vairagya which is prevalent all over the world for all these eras. Although the classical idea of Vairagya has been floating, but we do not look into Shastras, we do not adhere to the words of wise people, and that's why we have turned ourselves deaf. And then all these noises are coming on our ears, and that is how our thought process is structured. Anyway, so this was just enunciation to have a reappraisal of this idea of Vairagya, notion of Vairagya, concept of Vairagya, the precept of Vairagya, the theory of Vairagya, practices of Vairagya, philosophy of Vairagya, religion of Vairagya, psychodynamics of Vairagya, and perhaps even physiodynamics of Vairagya. So today we are going to touch up on this matter, because what so far I said was just material for you to have your own thought process structured. Plan your thought process and structure your thought process. Because if I have to do it, then I will have to go in every dimension of it. And then many of you do not have idea of these dimensions. They'll have to explain dharma, artha, kama, moksha, brahmacharya ashram, grahasthashram, vanaprasthashram, sannyasashram, and then brahma karma, guna karma, kshatra guna karma, vaishya guna karma, and shudra guna karma. Many of you have no idea of all these things. So therefore you must understand, you have to open that subject matter for you to understand, for you to really launch yourself on inquiry into Vairagya, investigation, inquiry into Vairagya. Anyway, now this Vairagya, as in our language we call it as dispassion. Dispassion is totally mind material. Where is the passion? You say in the mind. Where should be the dispassion? You say it should be in the mind. So we think that it is in the realm of mind that the dispassion has to be evolved. If the dispassion has to be raised up, you think it should be only raised up in the mind. And we all know how much the mind is in our control, while on the other hand, we are under the control of the mind. Now, if we are under the control of the mind and very little of the mind is our control, how and what is the chance that we will be able to develop dispassion, which we believe or perhaps have a conviction that it is all in mind and dispassion should come in mind. The mind is so unwieldy. Nothing is as weird as mind. Nothing is as unpredictable as mind. And that we are trying to put that responsibility of developing dispassion in the mind. Now, when it is such a untrustworthy aspect, the most untrustworthy thing which all of us have in our life is our own mind. And then we are trying to entrust all the activity process of dispassion onto it. Understand the paradox? Anyway, so we think the dispassion of our idea is something only the mind has to do. or something that must be gotten from the mind. But Patanjali opens out a new dimension for us. If you recall, with the concept of effort during abhyasa, I said it should be kaya, vacha, manasa. Now, with a popular idea of Vairagya, we think it is only of manasa. Where is the kaya? What are you going to do with the kaya? What is the bodily endeavor? Because effort in abhyasa part of our study, we said abhyasa is an effort. Effort, kaya, vacha, manasa. Effort means sthula sukshma karana sharira, kaya, and then vacha, manasa. Manasa on mind on its plane, and vacha means again para pashyanti madhyama vekhari. So that's the broader opening of kaya, vacha, manasa. The Vairagya similarly is kaya, vacha, manasa. We just overlook, or it doesn't occur to our mind that there is something that can be done from the front of the body. Now, if something has to be done physically, we give highest priority to that. We think it is quite possible and we can be doing something that has to be done physically. We know many of the intellectual things all people cannot do. If there are very mental things, all people cannot be taking recourse to it. But anything to be done physically, we think it is all possible for all of us. So we think that the channel of physical endeavor is quite open. It's a huge gate. But the gates are smaller and smaller when it comes to something to be done by mind, something to be done by intelligence. That's why there are many people who are just running away from intellectual subject like mathematics. For lifelong, they will be away from any intellectual endeavor that is needed in logic or intellectual processes or mathematics. So far, we don't have still a subject like we have physics. We don't have intelligics. And because for most of us, that is a prohibited area. Because we are averse of any intellectual endeavor. There are very, very few people who are interested in intellectual endeavor. But how many people are interested in physical endeavors? Almost all of us. Unanimously, everyone goes for physical endeavor. So there is a body front for Vairagya. And this is best evolved by technology of yoga. I said the other day, the means of yoga is that there is a kind of yoga as means, and then the end too is yoga. So one is lower yoga, the other one is higher yoga. Through lower yoga, we try to attain higher yoga. With no non-yoga, un-yoga, you can't be attaining yoga. There is no way to attain yoga by un-yoga or non-yoga. To attain yoga, you must have means of the nature of yoga. Yogat yoga pravartate. Yoga is attained by yoga. Naturally, the means yoga is inferior and end yoga is superior. Means yoga is less profound and end yoga is more profound. And therefore, if you recall, I said to be steady the mind, from the front of body we can do something to collect resources to be steady the mind and be calm the mind. If you do not recall that clearly, let me tell you that as a reminder, many of you have taken recourse to it. You quieten the mind by going to Shirshasana, which is a posture for you. You take up half alasana, which is a posture for you, and you quieten your mind. You go for Viparita, 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 Viparita Paschimottanasana to quieten the mind, to be steady the mind. So that's a posture for you. And so from the physical front, you are able to collect the components of sthiti for mind, steadiness component, steady component of the mind, steadiness component of the mind by asanas. Then now you have also scope to explore asanas which give you components of Vairagya in the sense of thirstlessness, in the sense of temperance, in the sense of moderation. So from the physical front, the Vairagya attainment is also suggested in yoga from physical front. And you will understand the physical forces behind Vairagya or absence of Vairagya, or avairagya and absence of avairagya from the body front. Because there are organisms in body, or there are organs in body which are directly connected to the mental constitution within ourselves. The nervous system, the glandular system, endocrine system. We all know that with the input that has come from modern science of anatomy, physiology, that the glands can really work on our states of mind. With something called as master gland, pituitary gland, pineal gland, then we have suprarenal gland, adrenal gland. So these glands, their malfunctioning will spoil our mental persona. And their proper functioning will keep our mind in sanity, in sane persona. And then exalted function can do something more, much more than that. So, again, to consider the esoteric anatomy physiology that yoga has postulated, there is enormous scope to really develop components of Vairagya through the body-based practices of yoga. And you primarily look at asanas as body-based practices. But let me tell you that even there are body-based practices to turn out ahimsa chemistry in you. Because all our states, right from violation of yamas such as himsa, asatya, abrahmacharya, steya, parigraha, ashaucha, asantosha, etc., look at the biochemical support that they are underlying factors, biochemical underlying factors behind all these states. And understand that there are again support systems, valuable support systems accorded for ahimsa chemistry. Ahimsa is not just a conduct, ahimsa is a chemistry. As much as himsa is a chemistry, himsa is not just an act of violence. There is a chemistry behind it. Now, this basic fact must be really understood and deeply engraved, that all our states are chemical states, either virtuous states or vicious states, laudable states or abhorrible states. They are all chemical states. So there is chemistry of ahimsa, biochemistry of ahimsa, electrochemistry of ahimsa, biochemistry of satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, electrochemistry of ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Similarly to shaucha, santosha, tapa, swadhyaya, ishwara pranidhana, etc. The yamas are structured over biochemistries, electrochemistries, and chemical processes of our embodiment. They are not just practices. And therefore, I have been repeatedly telling you that these are not moral ethical practices. Moral ethical practices are practices. You really don't bother about chemistry behind it. It's only a superfluous kind of expression that you are in morality and ethicality. You will have to project morality while inside you will be boiling with immorality. It doesn't matter because it's only for behavior. Morality is for behavior, ethicality is for behavior. So it is behavior, it is expression. What is boiling under it is really not counted. The contrary can be boiling, yet you can be having, you can project that you are a very, very, very decent person. The decency is more an expression. But inherent decency is a chemistry. So morality is an expression. But inherent morality will be chemistry. Inherent ethicality will be chemistry. So in normative science, it only bothers about your expression, your projection, and then what really, not what is underlying, what is inlying in you. Underlying your expression, they don't bother. Inlying in you, they don't bother. If there is inlying indecency, they don't bother, but you must have projection of decency in you, then you are acclaimed as a decent person. Anyway, so for all these, there is a physical effort, body-based effort because of identification of esoteric anatomy and physiology, which the science of yoga has done, which the Adhyatma has done, Yoga Shastra has done. That is extremely valuable contribution. That is why people look at asanas as postures and they think these are physical postures. They don't understand that how it works on the very chemical processes within our embodiment. So the yogasanas also actually primarily basically they are trying to open out that channel which is going to be major river for Vairagya to be flowing in your embodiment. And then there will be tributaries coming by way of Ahimsa river, Satya river, Asteya river, Brahmacharya river, etc., etc. The yoga, Chitta Nadi Ubhayata Vahini, which you should recall, which I quoted in our discussion on Abhyasa. It's a river. The river has tributaries. Like Ganga has tributary, Yamuna has tributary, Brahmaputra has tributary, Kaveri has tributary, Godavari has tributary, Narmada has tributary. So there are tributaries to rivers. So the Ahimsa biochemistry is a tributary to Yoga Nadi. Satya Nadi is tributary to Yoga Nadi. Similarly, Asteya river, Brahmacharya river, Aparigraha river, Shaucha river, Santosha river, Tapa river, Swadhyaya river, Ishwarpanidhan river, Asana river, Pranayam river. These are all tributaries to yoga. It's a huge river. It has all these tributary rivers. Ashtanga, each facet of Ashtanga is a tributary to Yoga Nadi. So, in every aspect of yoga, there is a physical component. As student of yoga, you must identify that. For ahimsa to be built up on its infrastructural plane, the biochemical plane, electrochemical plane, we need to modify the physiology. So there is physiology of ahimsa. There is physiology of Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Shaucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishwar Pranidhana. So through the body-related processes such as kriyas, asanas, mudras, bandhas, we try to tap the resources of the sublimation or transmutation from body front. The body is best tapped, or body's sources are best tapped by yoga technology. So there is a way for ahimsa potential to be developed, ahimsa chemistry to be enriched, something to be done corporeally. Similarly for satya, similarly for asteya, similarly for all yamas, similarly for all niyamas, something can be done from the front of body. The body is put to use in a best possible manner by yoga technology and nowhere else. Nowhere else the body is put to best kind of turnouts. It can be any other kind of art. We know arts which are carried out by body parts. There are so many vocations and occasions which are where the body is involved, but the body is not invested the way it is invested in yoga. So yoga technology stands out in making corporeal investments, body-based investments, off-body investments, from body investments, body matter investments in best possible manner. So, as students of yoga, we don't have to wait for mind to develop Vairagya. We can do something on the plane of body, from the body, through the body, with the body, more precisely with associated body, needed body, unified condition of body. The body can be best invested that way. So the Vairagya can be generated from body front. Fine-tune the glands. Can anyone put an argument here that after the fine-tuning of the glands, that the mind will not be sublime and will not be transmuted? So fine-tune the chemistries of the body, the chemical, the emissions or the chemicals which are oozing from liver, stomach, colon, bladder, spleen, pancreas, intestine, duodenum. So just as there are secretions in glands, the organs too are capable of secreting for yoga. So you fine-tune them to secrete the sublime biochemistry which will enrich Nirodha potentials in you, yoga potentials in you, abhyasa potentials in you, vairagya potentials in you. So restraint of the mind is not just, it is of the chitta, it is not of the mind. It is of the chitta. And if you recall, I said the grossest manifestation of chitta is our body, corporeal body, body of cells, body of tissues. This is also chitta manifestation. The body is also chitta manifestation. So, the Vairagya is not something that we should depend on mind, which is most undependable factor within us. We can start doing something from the front of body, where we have some voluntary access. See how much the body comes under voluntary system. How much the mind comes under voluntary system? How far? In what realm? So in destructive realms, negative realms, mind will come under voluntary system very easily. But not for sublime and ennobled dynamics, ennobled activities, transmuting activities, the mind doesn't come in our voluntary system. The bad things can happen voluntarily. You decide and you can do. Anyone can decide and do to more or less degree. There is no difficulty for one to become a bad person. How far one will become bad is different thing, but everyone can become bad and there is no difficulty in becoming bad. But see the difficulty in becoming good. Very little potency is there for in the voluntary system to become good, but there is a lot of potentials and potencies to become bad. So the corporeal practices, physical practices, body matter practices of yoga are enormous because of its technology. And therefore, there is also a portal, or there is a corridor, a physical corridor to peep into, or what is called as Chanchu Pravesha, have a slightest entry into the Vairagya chemistry. So there are asanas. That's why that Paschimottanasana, which all of you know, is called Brahmacharya asana. Brahmacharya asana. Now where is the Brahmacharya? Tell me. How much it is in Chitta and how much it is in body? How much it is physical and how much it is mental? That's why that asana is called Brahmacharya asana. Kurmasana, where the kurma, the tortoise is characterized here as something which takes the senses in. So, taking the senses in is such an important process in yoga, pratyahara. So, withdrawing the senses is so important in pratyahara, so important in essential yoga, and therefore there is a kurmasana. So, Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, you can all constitute them in a way that they will turn out Abhyasa components and Vairagya components. In turning Abhyasa components, you do turn out corresponding Vairagya components. In turning out Vairagya components, you can turn out corresponding Abhyasa components. And that you can experience yourself by getting into Shirshasana and Sarvangasana. You will see that you become dispassionate in your appearance, you form of mind even. And therefore, when you adhere to the deeper technology of it, you can penetrate your access to deeper aspects of embodiment and get that dispassion, even in Shirshasana, Sarvangasana. Now, do you just become quiet in Halasana? Don't you become dispassionate in Halasana? Do you just become quiet in Janu Shirshasana and not dispassionate in Janu Shirshasana? Do you just become quiet in Setubandha Sarvangasana or Viparitkarni and not become dispassionate? You cannot be quiet without being dispassionate. You cannot be dispassionate without being quiet. That's how I have been telling you to relate the two with each other. So, even there is a physical portal or corridor to work on quite gross aspects of Abhyasa Vairagya with which one must start. We must start collecting gross components of Abhyasa Vairagya. It is later that we will be going for finer components, collecting the finer components. So the Vairagya, there is a gate from the front of body provided by yoga technology through the asanas, kriyas, mudras, etc., etc. And then with its esoteric anatomy physiology well crystallized and to support the physical process of physical process in yoga by way of asanas, kriyas and mudras, It is esoteric physiology which is making that worthwhile, that there is a process for Vairagya. So you don't have to depend on your mind, which is not really dependable. You can depend on your physical endeavors, which is more dependable. You can depend on physical endeavors much more than your mental endeavors. So therefore, understand the Vairagya, when it is to be inculcated, it is not just by getting a brainwash. How many of us can get brainwashed by Vairagya sermon? And even after getting brainwashed, how long does it remain? How long does it stay with us? It is very ephemeral. Even if you are getting sublimation by brainwash, it is very, very ephemeral. Perhaps next day morning it will be gone. So therefore, for Vairagya, see again, there is a wonderful scheme in classical yoga if you really get oriented to the classical process. There is a Satsanga channel, there is Sadhana Sangha channel. In Sadhana Sangha channel, you have all these practices, Kaya, Vacha, Manasa. And in yoga, Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, Shvasa. And then there is Shastra Sangha. Bhagavad Gita can help you inculcate some values for lifetime. They will not be ephemeral. Upanishadic precepts, Upanishadic sermons, or coming from saints' literature, saintly literature. They have eternality. They are speaking about eternal values. They are not speaking of values which evaporate, like spirit and petrol. They stick on. They stick on our chitta. So, Vairagya through Satsanga, Vairagya through Sadhana Sangha, Vairagya through Shastra Sangha, Vairagya through Ahara, Satvik Priya Ahara, Satvik Priya Vihara, Satvik Priya Achara, Satvik Priya Vichara. So Ahar, Vihar, Achar, Vichar will be again very strong tributaries to Vairagya river. And of course to Abhyasa river, because they go hand in hand. So Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha, Satvik Ahar, Vihar, Achar, Vichar, Yajna principle, Dana principle, Tapa principle. This is the broad-based foundation that Adhyatma gives. And we lose our connectivity with these, and therefore the things appear to be very, very difficult or improbable for us. Let's have a chord with Yajna, Dana, Tapas. There is a greater chance for us to develop, collect Abhyasa components and Vairagya components and build them up. Nurture them, nourish them, culture them, season them. So also, the Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha, Ahar, Vihar, Achar, Vichar. So we must embrace all these broad-based means of yoga. We are just embracing narrow-based yoga in modern world. Because today in modern world, what is yoga? I am a little ashamed to open that out and tell you. You all know it, or you can certainly know it, what goes under the name of yoga today. But if we have our cords with the classical concept of yoga, we will not be misled. That's like a thread. One who is doing the kite flying, the thread in the hand. The kite is under control. The thread is lost from the hand. What is the control on the kite in the sky there? So therefore, this education of classical yoga is so vital, so important. Whoever is your teacher, you won't be prone to get misled. So say that you have chords with classical yoga. That's what I'm trying through the series here. And here for Vairagya, understand what has to be done. Where all body comes, in Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha. Satsanga, you must walk to a place where there is Satsanga, where there is Sattva Sangha, where there is Satya Sangha. You must take your body there. You can't leave the body back home and say, I'm going to Satsanga. You will have to take your body there. In Sadhana Sangha, whether it is Kaya Vacha Manasa Sadhana, Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, see the Sharira Sadhana there. It's all Sharira. So you will take your body with it. You will take the body through the process of sublimation. An embodiment through the process of sublimation. So there is physical front. Let us look at this. This is the outermost gate. The body is outermost gate for our activity processes. So let's try to identify the potentials there. So Vairagya can be really started from the plane of body. In what way can you start from the plane of body? See, the dispassion or the passion. The passion is not very, very, very mental. Even the modern science corroborates with this, because it speaks of tendencies of the flesh. Where is the flesh? Is it in body or is it in mind? It is very much in the body. So there is something called tendency of the flesh. There are tendencies of the body. Should you not tackle with the tendencies of the body which are prone to be avairagya or avairagyic? We'll have to reform there. The body is not neglected in our spiritual sadhanas, as it is projected in the pseudo-spiritualism, that the body is something to be neglected, overlooked, neglected, it's a problem, it's a parasite, it will pull you back, transcend the body. Use the body. Yoga tells you to use the body. Adhyatma tells you to use the body. It becomes kshetram. Let us make the body kshetra, then it will not really antagonize. It will be resourceful. We don't make the body kshetra and then therefore we think it is an antagonizing force. So many of the philosophies and religions have looked down upon body, belittled body, hated body. They have gone for even encouraged physical chastisement, thinking that the body is our foe in spirituality. The body should be made kshetra. This is what the philosophy of the lore tells us. When it becomes kshetra, it will be not only cooperating with you, it will extend its endowments to you. It has potentials as kshetra. When it becomes kshetra, it has potentials to make you more and more noble. You can take a quantum leap with the help of body for ennoblement. So, the point is, passion means something to do with the tendencies. And tendencies are there right in the flesh itself. Right from flesh, the tendencies go quite deep, unfathomably deep. But there are tendencies in the body as well called tendencies of the flesh. So we can start reforming there at least. And that is the right way to go about. So, hope you got a valuable perspective of Vairagya, dimension of Vairagya, where it is something to do with a very corporeal body, physical body. And therefore in yoga technology, that body is used for Vairagya. Asanas are used for Vairagya components and thereby for Abhyasa components. Asanas are used for Abhyasa components and thereby for Vairagya components. So that's the convection. So you can do the asanas in a major corridor of Vairagya. You will develop Vairagya in a big way, and you will also get benefit of abhyasa components and abhyasa potentials. Sometimes asanas done for abhyasa, you will get rich endowments for abhyasa potentials, but side by side you will also get some gains in Vairagya potentials and components. So Vairagya sadhana can be launched on very, very, very trustworthy, which is in our voluntary activity force, the very body. And it can start there itself. So let's try to have, let us reinvent the idea of Vairagya rather than remaining in that very, 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 what you call as putrid idea of Vairagya, that it is dispassion, something totally in the gravity of mind. Yoga should open out your eyes and it should tell you that you can do something with very body because of associated conditions and with it's such a noble companion such as breath. The mind also will behave well and will be under your control with a very, very noble companion. If you give it to mind, then the many aspects of mind will come in your voluntary control because of the breath. Like, somebody behaves well because of who walks with that person. You can't misbehave with that person walking with you, that person coming along with you. You can't misbehave. So the mind is misbehaving factor. When we give the company of breath, it will not be so misbehaving. If it is not so misbehaving, it will come under your voluntary control. And therefore, you have greater chance of doing something. Again, I terminate this session by telling you, the breath does all magic. Prana does all magic. All improbable become very, very probable with the breath. Be that in the front of body or be that in the front of mind. The breath as companion and then the breath as a spearheading force will play marvels. So, I wanted to give you two new dimensions to your the process of reinventing the idea of Vairagya. One I gave in the earlier phase of the session today, and the one I gave you in the later phase of the lesson today. So try to understand this lesson in two parts. Earlier phase, and the earlier phase we spoke about Vairagya as it comes in the wisdom of the Lord, and the second one, the body gates to Vairagya. Vairagya with the gates given by Vairagya, corridors offered by the body and by the physic. So that's how the today's lesson was schemed. So with that, we will end this session. Namaskar all of you.